Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Mitch Januszewski. We're in our CJ1 Plus this morning. It's equipped with Proline 21 avionics and as a backup, a Garmin GPS 5000. And we'll be going through what would be the pre-start checklist. We've done our outside items, our hot items. We've checked all of that. And now we're starting with a cold cockpit. And we'll go through the checklist. We'll go through programming our flight plan in the FMS and in the Garmin, and all of the steps that we would do prior to taxi. So I use the Textron checklist, which I've laminated so that it's handy, and it proceeds from the engine start point. We won't actually start the engines. We're going to do this on ground power today, but we can imagine that we have done that. Starting with the checklist first, we've completed our pre-flight inspection. Our wheel chocks are removed. The cabin door has been closed and locked, and we've checked all of our locking indicators to make sure that the pins are engaged. We have passengers. We'll give them a brief. We'll talk to them about the use of seat belts. We'll talk to them about when it's appropriate to sit. We'll talk about the sterile cockpit lower than 10,000 feet. All of those things that we need to pre-flight them on, the use of oxygen masks, no smoking, emergency egress, all of the things that you'd expect that passengers need to know before the flight. The next step is seat belts and shoulder harnesses. Make sure that they're secure. For clarity's sake, I won't put my shoulder harness on right now. I would if this was an actual flight. The next thing to check is to make sure that the rudder pedals are where they belong so that you can get full rudder authority while you're sitting in your seated position. People sometimes forget to do this. It's an important step, especially if you have to have full rudder deflection because of an engine out situation at a lower airspeed. The next step, the battery switch, which is right here, we put to on. We check voltage, and we've got 29 volts. We're on a GPU. The next step in the checklist is standby flight display switch, which we'll first put in the test position, look for a green light. We have the green light, meaning the battery's fine, and we turn it on. It'll self-initiate. You'll see in a minute. It will come up. Since we're going to be starting the engine, we want the rotating beacon light on, and that is on. We want to make sure that our air conditioning switches are off. So in this case, we'd be looking for off, auto, and off on the defog. And sure enough, the compressor is not on, everything is off. And now we check the annunciator panel to make sure that things are as expected. Of course, we have some extra steps here because we're filming, but we would expect oil pressure warning to be on because the engines aren't running. We'd expect the generator lights to be on. Cabin hydraulic flow, of course, because the hydraulic pumps aren't putting out. Our fuel pressure is low. These are our HOTS, and since we don't have them on, we would expect that the HOTS would be off. And since we've not yet turned our audio system on, we expect this video and audio fail. These are all as expected. Now, normally at this point we would turn the engines, start the engines. The normal procedure for that would be, if it was at night, we want to make sure that our floodlights are on high, and we'd press one of the engine start buttons. We would observe our ITT to make sure that it's climbing. We would observe oil pressure, expect it to climb, and we would expect N1 to start increasing, and at some point N2 to start increasing as well. And we'd be watching for either a hot start or a hung start. At 9% or above, we would add fuel to start the engines, and of course we'd see an ignition indicator during the start as well as a boost pump on. So assuming that our engines have successfully started, we would then check once again to make sure that everything is expected, that oil pressure warning is off, generators are on, fuel pressure is normal, and hydraulic flow is normal. And we would confirm that by looking at our DC ammeters as well to make sure that both generators are providing power. After we've started the engines, what we would do is we would go through a generator test. So both generator switches are to on. If we had external power, we would disconnect it at that point. And then we would do our generator check. So the generator check is we would first turn the left generator to off, and we would see that the left DC amp should go to 0 and the load should be picked up by the right generator. We would put the right generator to off, at which case we would get 2 0 readings, and we would also get left generator and right generator off, as well as a master warning. Now, we would turn the generators on one at a time, make sure they're picking up the load properly. We'd be looking at our voltmeter to make sure that we're getting approximately 28.5 volts. The next step would then, after we have both generators online, would be to turn our battery switch off. Of course, when we turn our battery switch off, we would see a decrease in amps on both sides, right? And we would see the voltmeter go to 0. Now, once again, at the end, the battery switch comes on, 28 volts. Everything should be in its normal position now. Now, we're ready to do the things that we do prior to taxi. Before taxi, we turn our avionics master switch on, which is this switch, and a bunch of things start to happen. We'll see that the Garmin starts to initialize. We'll see that our PFDs and MFDs initialize. And first they're going to slew, and the AHRS is going to align. The DGs are going to align. This is all happening. We see that the ProLine 21 panel comes alive. And we have to wait for things to stabilize. It's very important that the airplane not be moved while this is happening, while this alignment is happening. And the PFDs remind us of that. So the left PFD has come online, and the right PFD is still working, coming online. They're both online now. The next item is our pressurization. We need to preset the pressurization to 200 feet above our landing field elevation. Today we're going to Fort Myers, which has an elevation of about 200 feet. So we'll set this to the next higher number, which is 300. So in the set altitude, using our set knob, we set 300. Now comes a really intricate, involved process of programming the ProLine 21. I'm just kidding, because once you know the ProLine 21, you'll love it. It's an engineer's dream, and very, very logical. Very powerful system, but not intuitive. So we're going to assume that we know we've gotten our clearance, and we know what our clearance is, and we've gotten the weather, the local ATIS, and we will program the FMS system. So the first page that comes up when the system initializes is the status page. You can also go to that status page using the index button and status. Status page tells us the effectivity of the database, what time it is, what date it is. The second page shows us that it truly is indeed programmed for the CJ1 Plus with the FJ44-1AP engines, what our maximum takeoff weight is. So we've confirmed this, and now the system is telling us, okay, let's go to POSINIT, which is our position initiation. So the system believes that this is our FMS position, where the airport that we think we're at is here, and they're very close. You'll see that that's okay, so that's logical. So we can choose to set our position to that FMS position, and that is indeed what's loaded on here. The next thing that it takes us to is the flight plan page. So we're going from Smyrna, Tennessee to Fort Myers. So what we would do is we would program in KFMY. That's our destination. Press execute. RSW has already been programmed into there, but let's do that again. KRSW. That's our alternate. Execute. Now we're going to put in our weights and our cruising altitude. So I have this programmed as a basic operating empty weight. All right, and I have, let's say that I've got 300 pounds of passengers and and baggage. Passengers and baggage. So let me show you what happens if I put 3, and let's make it even higher. Let's make it 350. And I'm going to put that in under cargo because it makes no difference where you put that. And I execute that, and look what happens. It says check takeoff performance. Well, I wonder what went wrong. I think I know what went wrong. We know our gross weight on this airplane, maximum gross weight is 10.7. Look at what our weight is showing, 10.750. So it won't let us, it'll alert us when we're overweight. We're going to leave somebody behind. David Miller is going to be taking the Greyhound. So we're taking David off, and so we'll only have 200 pounds on board. And look, our takeoff is 10.610. Wonderful. We're within what we expect. We would then go to the takeoff page. All right, I've already pre-programmed that we're going to take off on runway 32. I've already pre-programmed the winds in here. They're 320 at 12. I would program in my outside air temperature 21 degrees, program in the altimeter setting, and let me just program that last bit in for you again. Program in the altimeter. It gives us the pressure altitude. Now we choose, is it a wet runway or a dry runway? If it's a wet runway, it's telling us it's using supplemental data. Dry runway, it's not. The next page, because we see there's 3 pages, is our anti-ice on or off. What's our flap setting? So I've got anti-ice off, flaps 15. This is giving us our takeoff weights. Okay, great. We're less than 10.7. Our runway is 8,038 feet long, and we're going to use up 3,112, so we're good there. These are V speeds, and it's asking us if we want to send them to the PFD. We press send. You'll see that these turn magenta. You'll also see that they populate in both PFDs, the pilots and co-pilot side. We've got V1, VR, V2, and VT, which we can use also for our single engine speed. So we're done with that. All of the programming as far as weight, etc., is done. If you ever get lost in this system, there's one key that will really help you out. It says IDX. It stands for index, but it's really the I don't know key. If you press this key, it gives you all of these things that you can go to. So you can do pause init again. You can put in status, which was our first page, right? You can put in pause init, which is where we set all of our parameters for where we are. You can put in a fix. This is where you do holds. This is a progress page. This is also the page that you use when you're programming the unit with a new database. So this is the I don't know page. If you press this, you'll likely find what you need. Now we have choices for Fort Myers. Now I happen to know that the winds at Fort Myers are blowing from 220 at 10 knots. So I'm thinking RNAV 23 is going to be my approach. I can always change it later, but I'm going to put that in for now. And whether I'm going to be using one of the transitions or vectors, we'll use vectors for now. All right. Now the other thing that gives us here are arrivals. Here's our stars. And look, we've been cleared for the Tiny 2. That's part of our clearance, Tiny 2. And here are the transitions. It's not showing up here. I wonder what happens if I press the next key. Oh look, I get another transition. So the plier transition is the one that we want. We press execute. Now, when we go back to the legs page, which shows us all of our waypoints to confirm, there's our takeoff runway, there's our first 2 points. This is a discontinuity, which we can get rid of later, but it separates the en route phase from the arrival phase. There's plier. We would check this against the plate. And here's all of the points for our arrival. And here is our approach. So we've got all that in there. We have everything that we need in here. We've got our V speeds, we've got our legs, we've got our arrivals, we've checked our performance. What's left? One thing left. How do we want things to display on the PFD and MFD? In both cases, we can choose what's the data source of information is. Right now it's VOR1. Our preset is for FMS1. We press that and there's FMS1. Our preset here in the Copilot's PFD is VOR2. And in our presets we have FMS2. We press the button and FMS2 becomes active. How do we want this to display? This little format key. Right now we have a traditional, what we would look like an HSI display, right? But our format button allows us to change it to waypoints. And you'll see that our first waypoint, LGC, is shown here. We can also do a DG display. So we can have the arc with the DG. So we'll go back. This is the display for our waypoints. We've got our waypoints in here. We go to the MFD menu button, and that button determines what's shown on here. So if I turn off high nav aids, they all go away. But I like to have my high nav aids because that kind of tells me which VRs I'm close to. Look, I can press high nav aids. They populate. If I wanted to show nearest airports, I can press that. And nearest airports show up. Same thing with no nav aids intersections. You get the idea. I really like the high nav aids section. The other thing that I like, and this is a personal preference, but I like the range altitude select. What is that? That's the banana. That's the banana that shows when we're going to reach our pre-selected altitude at our current rate of climb or descent. Very helpful thing. Make sure that you make crossing restrictions. So I've chosen that. You can choose to do that for the left and the right side. This button determines which side. So I'll do the same thing for the right side, although you won't see the banana with the Garmin system. So we've gone through all this, gone back to our legs page. We have previously pre-programmed the Garmin, which I strongly suggest you do. If you have an electrical failure and have to go into the emergency mode, don't forget that all of this will go away. You'll have this HSI and you'll also have your standby display. You don't want to be trying to program this in that situation. I strongly recommend you have this pre-programmed and showing up on your Copilot side PFD, ready to go in case things go south. So we've gotten everything pretty much ready on our ProLine 21 system. We've got our V-speeds, we've got our flight plan in, we've decided what we're going to show, we've confirmed that we're within takeoff weight parameters, we've confirmed that our runway distance is appropriate for the amount of runway available. We're all done with this. It's all set. This is really great. And at this point, we would expect to be cleared to taxi, and we would do our taxi checklist items, and subsequently, after that, when we get to the runway, before the runway, I should say, we would do our pre-takeoff items. Thanks for joining me. This is an opportunity to take a look at how we fly the CJ1 Plus. A couple of just important items, very important card to have. And as you're flying along, you'll find this invaluable. It has great tips and operating procedures for the CJ1 Plus. Thank you again for joining me.